We are live.
We're live now?
I think so.
Oh, yes. We're back in the saddle. Bienvenidos al podcast Shop Talk. We could just do the whole thing in Spanish, right, Lance?
Sure.
Sí.
Sí, señor.
Yeah, speaking of which, if you want to go to Argentina, hit us up.
That's right. We're going. Next February, or this coming February, I should say.
Nice. Let's see. So, welcome back to the Shop Talk podcast, where we talk about stuff. We actually had Brigham write a bunch of notes down for us, but yeah, so we're going to talk about improving your fly fishing game. We couldn't remember what we typed in there, but that's actually a good description there.
Yep.
So yeah, if you have questions, put those in the YouTube comments.
Yeah. If you're on Instagram watching us, flip over to the YouTubes.
Oh yeah. So
say hi on YouTube. That's where all the comments will be responded to.
Yeah. Also, Brigham, I would appreciate it if you change the color behind Lance's head to purple instead of green. So we'll see if he can do that.
But green's my favorite color.
Change the studio light strip to purple.
Oh, dude,
that's going to change our whole
nerdy
color scheme.
Can't even
That's
tell.
perfect.
Okay, I think we're good.
Anyway, yeah, so we'll take some questions. We have a bunch of stuff we want to talk about. As you know, our podcast is just us three talking about different stuff every time. Every 4 years or so, we have a guest, right?
We actually have a couple of guests lined up, but not any specific dates yet.
We do. Do we?
So,
Who are? Well, I guess we can.
Pat Dorsey said he would do it.
Yeah.
He's busy, though.
Yeah, they were going to have that fancy show here, the IFTD, and we were going to poach a bunch of our buddies to come and chat with us on this. So.
Yeah. Somebody likes our hats.
Yeah.
Look at this. Kelly Barnes. 2 on the shoulder, 1 on the head, and then a couple in the background.
The Mega Gashina. So, yeah, it's awesome.
Speaking of hats, they will have the... these specific hats are en route.
Yeah, we've just taken matters into our own hands. It's been really hard to find hats lately. So
we're making them.
We're making our own.
We have a sewing machine. Hand knit the hats all together.
Exactly. Lance has a Lance Egan custom series hat that's going to come out that's going to be most excellent.
It's going to be cool.
Yeah, excellent.
That's going to be the good one. Anyway,
so tonight the topic is how to improve your fly fishing game. Well, number one, I guess we jump right into it. Is there anything else we need to cover before we start jabbering our jaws about fly fishing? Any exciting new stuff and news?
Not right away.
If you're listening to this right now, you're looking at October in Utah. It's been kind of rainy. We're super stoked to start the fall season. Oh, here's another thing. I get a fish finally.
Oh.
My arm.
What do you know?
Watch this. Boom. Boom. See that?
Easy. Don't overdo it.
Yeah. I had shoulder surgery. 6 weeks later, I'm cleared. My doctor, who looks like Harry Potter, Dr. Chalmers, shout out to him. Bro hooked me up. So, yeah. I'm excited to finally be able to go out and fish. It's been a long time coming. Anyway.
Yeah, we're probably going to go out next week.
Yes. Yeah, so who knows where we're going to go. We never say that, right? Anyway,
because I never decide until Tuesday night at 11 p.m.
I say, Lance, where do you want to go? He's like, I don't care. I can catch fish out of my bathtub.
That's not what I say.
Yeah. Anyway, let's just kind of chat. What, Brig? Brig's pointing at his phone. Yes, it is a white
iPhone.
Is the phone for us?
Instagram people, go over to YouTube.
We are ending the Instagram feed shortly. Go to YouTube, log in, subscribe and like to this video, and see more of them.
And if you are on YouTube, go ahead and mash that thumbs up. Also, We would super appreciate it if you liked and subscribed our channel, or you liked the video and subscribe, right? I never say this right.
You like our video, subscribe to the channel, and even if you want, turn the notifications on.
Oh, yeah.
That means when we go live, you'll get a little notification saying, "Hey, Fly Fish Food's live."
So you basically force them to subscribe.
It's 100% mandatory.
And then the whole notification thing, that's a personal choice.
Oh, it is.
Based on your political affiliations and stuff like that. Perfect. All right. So we were talking about this. We came up with a pretty decent list of how to improve your fly fishing game. And so that's kind of a funny word, like improve. Fly fishing is a sport, pastime, hobby, whatever you want to call it, that is not measurable. It's not like you're a sprinter where you can track how good you are with your 100-yard dash or anything. So, what are your goals in regards to fishing, right? I think that everybody has a different reason why they fish. So, it's kind of difficult with a thing that's not very measurable as to how to improve. But what are some things that are common methods of fishing? Why do you fish? I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, everybody fishes for different reasons, but I think what you're getting at is more, where does one want to get with fishing? Is it enough just to get out? Is it that you want to catch more fish than you're catching currently? Is it that you want to have better understanding of fisheries? Is it that you want to learn more techniques? Everybody has different goals. Sometimes it's just getting away and chilling out for a minute, right? Escaping work, escaping whatever, and being in nature. And for others, it's really important to, really master a particular species or technique or place or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's funny, like we'll go out and spend all this time and money on gear and flies and trying to learn knowledge and get out and absolutely get your butt kicked, and you always hear, well, it's just nice to be outside. Actually, that's just code for I just got it handed to me and I'm trying to find the positive even though I'm frustrated.
Yeah, I think everybody's going to have some differences on how they gauge that sort of thing, but I mean, at the end of the day, we're all after the fish, so that's probably as a baseline. Are we catching the fish that we think we should? And then there's a lot of stuff that comes in under that, where size and quantity, and that sort of thing. So,
right.
And it's going to be different for everybody. So I wouldn't say it's tough to define, but certainly I think anybody could look at what they're doing and say, can I be better?
There's always room for improvement.
Regardless of what it is.
We worked with the Project Healing Waters for a little bit, and a lot of those guys are using fly fishing as kind of a therapy type thing. So and fly tying can do that, fishing can do that. So a lot of different reasons why people fish. So as far as like setting out what are my goals with fishing, why do I fish, as long as you can answer that yourself. And I will say this, if you're going to be like a competition fisherman, that's a totally different path. Like it takes a totally like very driven and methodical mindset. I've seen the way that those work. I don't think I could do it. I'm just skill wise or whatever, but I just don't think that competitive fishing is a totally different beast. What do you think about that, Lance?
It's not for very many people, that's for sure. It's a weird thing, and most people have zero interest in it, and I get it.
Yeah. But at the same time, like I super respect the ability to break down. There's a strategy to that. Like, okay, this is my beat. This is exactly the strategy that I need to be able to get the most points, and understanding that whole system. Because it's not like you can just go sit down on a rock and wait for a fish to rise and go catch it. Like you might be dealt a bad beat. Yeah,
you don't get to choose your water in comps. So to be a successful competition angler, you have to try and learn as many different techniques and learn to effectively fish different water types, and you don't get to choose where you're going, so they throw you on a piece of water and you got to make lemonade out of lemons a lot of times, right?
Yeah. And that's one thing we were talking about downstairs too, is like if you're, competition fishing still isn't going to be the end all be all end all to find out who's the best fisherman, right? Because not everybody can fish the exact same piece of water at the exact same time, right?
Yeah, there's always elements of luck, involved. That said, the best anglers in competitions and best teams tend to be near the top.
Yeah.
Very consistently. They don't always win, right? But
Yeah.
they're always near the top.
Yeah, there's never like a lucky full tournament where just people luck out and win the whole thing, right?
Not very common.
Right. Okay. What about you, Curtis?
One of the things I've seen from hanging out with Lance and seeing some of the other guys and talking to them that are in the competitions is their level of concentration and maybe attention to detail when they're fishing is, I think, a lot more intense than me. I'm speaking for me. I can't speak for everybody, but I think that's probably one of the biggest things is just focus and concentration when you're out there analyzing what you're doing. I'm not talking like just being a better caster, for instance. I'm saying from the competition. I mean, you, Lance, obviously are probably you have to be dialed in and concentrate on what you're doing, what's not working, what's working, and then just adapt. But you always have to be on your game. It's not like you're just lollygagging around and, gee, I'm enjoying the nature.
Right.
But you can still, take away from the competition. And, I find myself, at least, when I'm fishing, sometimes I realize I haven't been concentrating or whatever attention to detail I haven't been doing. And then all of a sudden I get with it and then, starts to make it happen.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, I guess we talk about competitions like they're happening all the time. I haven't done one in like a year and a half.
It's been a while, yeah.
Even when they're happening, you're doing 2, 3, 4, 5 of them max a year.
Yeah.
It's not like they're going on all the time, but yeah, you learn whether you're in a competition or not. Since most of the time we spend fishing is not, right? You're learning to focus on anything that's taking place. If you're on a lake, you're looking for fish to surface, looking for clues as to, letting you know where fish are, where they're feeding. Are they feeding high? Are they feeding low? Same thing on the river. You're always watching for a rising fish. If you're in a drifting boat, you're watching as the boat goes by to see what kind of water types you're kicking fish out of that maybe you didn't cover.
Yeah.
Things like that. You definitely always want to be paying attention.
Yep. And yes, with anything, tying is another one of those where I think a lot where I first got into tying, I was not focusing and concentrating. And so it's one of those things where if you're going to be better at anything, you have to just
practice,
pay attention. Yeah, practice.
That's, a lot of times when I go fish, I've got like these 4 new flies that I want to fish, and I want them to work so bad.
Yeah.
But I know that if I just stuck to the stuff that was working last year, that I would catch a lot more fish. But for me, that's a huge part of the element of fishing is, creating different flies, maybe building a better bomb, come up with something that's maybe a little bit different that works really well, so that's also another thing that drives you. So that leads us to the next thing that we want to talk about is, well, first of all, before we move on, I notice we have a lot of people from North Carolina.
What is up
here
with North Carolina, guys?
I know, I didn't even know they had electricity over there, but apparently they started the generator and YouTube works off of that.
Come on. Jared sent him a nasty text.
Yeah. Come on. Welcome our friends from North Carolina. So anyway, but we're going to talk about practice. Like, what can you practice to get better at fly fishing all around?
I have no idea.
I have no idea. Lance and I strung up a rod. We were casting out in the parking lot, and it seems like a lot of times you have to go somewhere outside of even your backyard to practice because you need a lot of room to cast. But that improves so much as far as fly fishing goes. Just getting good at casting, learning multiple casts, learning how to control line, things like that. And a lot of times it takes taking someone with you to show you what you're doing wrong with your cast to get better. It's kind of like golf, I guess. If you want to get good at golf, you definitely need to take lessons, and you need someone to break down your swing, stuff like that. So that's what I'm going to contribute to the practice bullet point, because I just read it right in front of me. So what do you guys have?
Casting is, I think people have heard us just beat that dead horse, right? It is one of the things that I find most frustrating with fly fishers, because you use the golf analogy. I can go to a presentation and ask, when I'm talking about these types of things, and ask the crowd, how many people have golfed before? And almost everybody raised their hand.
Yeah.
How many of you hit a bucket of balls? Everybody raised their hand. All right, how many of you are fly fishers? And everybody were there to fly fishing demonstration. They all raised their hand. How many of you have practiced casting on the grass, like in your yard or at a park, not on the water? And like 3 hands go up. And you're like, how do you go fishing without practicing?
Yeah.
You have to learn how to do this. And everybody says the same thing. Well, I cast well enough to catch fish. You do. You cast well enough. You've caught a fish before. You cast well enough to catch a fish.
Yep.
But you can always get better, myself included. There are all kinds of different casts. There are all kinds of different situations and scenarios where you need to employ different casts. And I can just tell you from watching hundreds and hundreds of anglers fish that most people, by most I mean like most, almost everybody has some sort of imperfection in their cast. Again, myself included. We all have things that if you think you're the best at everything in fly fishing, you know everything in fly fishing,
And
you might as well go do something else, because you're missing it.
Mhm.
There is so much to learn in fly fishing, but casting limits so many people. Like, I don't think it's, again, one of those, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So if you can't cast well enough to present a fly where it should be presented, and you don't even know that it should be presented there, well, then you don't understand that you need to improve. I get that part. But the other thing is, people will say all the time, like we did a Instagram story earlier where we were casting far. And of course, immediately the comments are, I don't need to cast that far. And I would argue, I've cast and fished with a lot of really good casters. I've met a whole bunch of people that say that they are really good at accuracy, and you get them fishing, and they're terrible at all kinds of casting. I've not met anybody yet that can cast really far with control that can't cast accurately and short.
Yeah,
because
that's a good
if you
point.
can cast far, you have total control at distance. You have control in fishing range, let's call it. And you're right. You don't, for most trout fishing on a river, you're not fishing 100 feet away. You're fishing, most of the time, 50 feet is a long cast, right? Most of the time, 20, 25, 30 feet. But if you can do that and cast into a wind with total control, total command of the cast, it's going to get you a lot more fish. So casting is a huge thing for me.
I think when people say that, it's probably either they don't know really, or they don't want to practice and therefore try to figure out a way to weasel out of that. I'm like, I cast far enough, I catch fish. Well, sure, but I mean, when I think of still water, when we're out on the boats or on the float tubes or anything like that, where they're certainly a sphere of influence with whatever you're on that's going to disturb the fish. And I'm not saying you won't catch any right beneath you or in close proximity, but if you think about maybe how much influence that is, and if you could throw an extra 10 feet or whatever it is. I mean, we've been fishing with people that really struggle to get enough line out to present the fly to where the fish are, to the point, where you'll step up and put a cast into the zone where the fish are going to be a little bit more conducive to eating, and boom, fish on. So, there's obviously different conditions, but I think it's a big underrated
and accuracy
skill.
Is certainly a huge part of it, no doubt. Accuracy is huge. Distance is also huge. It's amazing how many times you're on a river in a boat, especially drift boat, raft, doesn't matter, where just casting like 10, 15 feet further ahead of the boat makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
Or instead of being a foot and a half off the bank, being like 6 inches off the bank makes all the difference in the world. And I can tell you from my own personal experience rowing, plus talking and fishing with lots of guides, when you're rowing somebody and they can put fly wherever they want, the oarsman is much more likely to really pull and make an effort versus
it's like he's not going to make it
in
anyway.
the front of the boat that can barely cast. Usually, not always, we're generalizing here, but a lot of times the guide, early in the day they're going to be pulling hard, but after a few hours of watching somebody flail and knowing they're not going to make the cast whether you put a lot of effort into it or not, a lot of guides will, they're still going to pull on the oars, but they're not going to pull as hard. They're not going to keep you in the spots as long.
Yeah, for sure.
It's human nature.
Just so you know, I am cleared to fish, but not to row. So I'm
Right. That's not what I heard. I heard the stories about 89 times today.
Right, no doubt.
Cleared to row and
Hey,
everything.
Cheech, how's your shoulder? What am I supposed to say? Sorry, I already said it. I'm not going to tell you.
Read my shirt.
Yeah. Another thing about practicing
getting
casting.
Huh?
No, if we don't banter back and forth, it makes for a boring podcast.
All right.
Freaking Lance. All right. The other thing about casting and practicing is if you cast like on, not while you're not trying to focus on catching fish, you're more willing to put in the time to really fix the things you're doing wrong with your cast. So, just being time on the water doesn't always compute to good casting practice. Just my opinion there.
No, it does not.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that's really good at casting. We've talked about this before, but I don't know anybody that's really good at casting that has only ever cast on the water. Everybody that's really good at it has spent probably, the typical 10,000 hour rule, thousands of hours on grass or in a casting pond, if you will, but not fishing.
Yeah. So here's a question. Tim says, how do you determine when to switch up styles from straight nymphing to changing up to a dry dropper? So we have a bullet point up here that says practicing multiple techniques. So in my opinion, like if you're good at fishing, nymphs, whether it's Euro style or under an indicator, dry dropper, streamers, if you're good at those types of fishing, those times will just become intuitive, like when you should change over. Usually, if fish aren't rising a ton, that's usually a good reason to change up from a straight dry fly. But, we hear it all the time in the shops, like, hey, how long has it been since you switched over to just Euro nymphing? It's like, what do you mean switched over? And we still do it all. You have to have all the tools in your box. And just because you like to use the wrench most of the time, it doesn't mean that you're not going to bring the hammer out for the different type of job.
Hammer time.
Oh my gosh. Curtis will be giving dancing lessons.
1980s references.
Yeah.
Come on. Yeah, multiple techniques is something you need to practice too, right? Casting is awesome, but getting casting efficiency at different things. Casting an indicator rig is different than casting a dry fly. Casting a dry dropper is different than casting a dry fly. Casting a Euro rig is different than casting an indicator rig.
Yeah.
Throwing a team of streamers on still water is different than throwing a giant single articulated streamer on a river. They're all different. They all require ideally different rods or lines. There's obviously some overlap there, but and you just need to get efficient at all of those techniques to be able to cover a lot of bases in your fishing. Again, not everybody wants to do all those things, but if you do, then practice. Time on the water. Not everybody gets that. I get it. We all have limited. Nobody fishes too much.
Well, and
Nobody fishes enough.
There was a guy that was in the shop the other day, and I mean, he even said, "Hey, I'm kind of new to this," and mentioned that he was catching fish previously in the summer, and more recently just was not having as much luck. So, my first question was, how are you fishing? And he was doing a dry dropper. And I explained, if you're really good at a dry dropper, you'll probably catch fish when the dry dropper technique's going to work. But if that's not the optimal solution, you need to have the skills, or at least the wherewithal to put a different skill into use and throw nymphs or streamers or whatever. But anyway. So
right.
And that's just it. I remember back in the day when we had, the Provo River bounce rig, super effective technique on the Provo River. But if you went to some other river where, it's just different water type, fish holding in different areas, different food types, that's not going to necessarily be translatable to everywhere you fish. So if you're a one-trick pony, you're always going to struggle at certain types of fishing. So anyway, yeah.
True. Another good one to practice that old Russell talked about in the comments here is practicing knots.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
People, the time we get customers that, they say, well, how often should I change flies? And you're like, well, as often as you need to.
Yeah.
How do you answer that question? They're like, well, I like to just tie a good one on and then just fish it for as long as I can. And you're like, well, yeah, everybody like to do that. But if they say they're really bad at tying knots, it takes them 20 or 30 minutes to change flies. That's not okay. Like that, even if you have bad eyesight, you should be able to do it in a minute or two.
Yeah.
Here's how this scenario plays out. We see a minivan pull up in front of the shop. The back of the minivan opens up. Guy goes out the back, grabs a fully rigged fly pole, and it's always awesome watching them try to open the door and hurry and sneak the rod in. But they're like, hey, can you rig me up with a bounce rig? And we always say, well, sure, we can tie a few knots for you, but like, what happens when you break this off? 5-10 minutes in. We're like, well,
I'll tell you what happened. So I had that happen. I rigged a dude up. He goes up the canyon. Literally 1 hour later, he was 2 casts or 3 casts into his day.
Yeah.
Broke something off and drove all the way back down to have us re-rig his setup. So yeah, learning knots and practicing the knots.
We have that conversation several times each summer where someone says, I don't know how to tie the knots. Can you just rig it for me? And well, I can, but here's the deal. Like 20 minutes in, it's going to be a bird's nest and you're going to have to do it on your own. So it's not going to help you a lot to, it's going to get you 20 minutes of fishing, but if you don't know how to do it, let me just show you how to do the knots and then you can take it from there.
Yeah.
Practice those knots. That's a good thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I say that a lot. The best way to get better at fishing is just practicing knots. I always had a spool of tippet in my office when I had the old desk job, and I would mess around with knots. And you don't even need to learn a large variety of knots. Just learn a triple surgeon's knot, a clinch knot. Those are probably the knots you're going to use the most.
Most common, for sure.
But I mean, there's 4 or 5 different core knots that you can practice, and
grabbing a cheap spool line and during your next favorite football game, basketball game, whatever you're watching, Golf Channel, tie some knots. My dad doesn't fish, so I used to the few times I've been fishing with him, especially when I was younger, I would just take a little Walmart $1.99 Berkeley special 6-pound line in the car and just throw it at him and say, start practicing your knots. We got 2 hours of driving here. By the time we get there, you got to be able to do these.
Yeah. Do we need to turn Lance up over
there? I
did.
Okay,
you did.
Yeah.
All right. So they're just behind the times, right?
Yep.
So,
I am talking into the mic. It's like 2 inches from my mouth.
Yeah. Well, we know Lance struggles with feet and inches sometimes, so just kidding. All right.
I don't think so.
Well, we're moving right along. Bullet point number 3. I think we have 6 up there, but what does the word good mean to you? It's a relative word. Like, what is good at fishing? What is a good day of fishing? What is good at Euro nymphing? What does that mean to you? Because the word good means something different to everybody. So especially if you're online and everybody's arguing about what's the best rod or what's, I crushed them today. But if you were a fly on the wall watching them fish, you'd see that they caught 8 fish, and maybe for somebody else, they're not going to be satisfied unless they caught 35 fish in that amount of time. So it's all relative. Everybody has a different definition of what good is. So keep that in mind as you're, that's why we talked about what are your goals, like what do you want out of this, and then you can kind of determine what good means to you.
Totally. We all start at the same place, right? So remember that everybody, when you're new, just catching a fish is cool. Really, that's a breakthrough. And then catching 2 or 3 fish a trip is a breakthrough. And then, consistently catching 5, 6, 8, 10 fish a trip, and that keeps growing hopefully from there depending on your fishery. But yeah, everybody starts from 0 and works up from there. So you're exactly right. It's 100% relative. Sometimes when people say that they've killed them, we don't know whether that means 6 fish or 60 fish. That's a relative term.
That's a tough one.
And it's either way, they're having a lot of fun, so it doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. But it is relative.
Yeah, and everybody's, if somebody comes in and they're catching 10 fish a day and want to catch more, then great, do it. you know, maybe for them catching 20 is going to be even better, or you know, whatever the number is. So,
and maybe your jam is going to the river and just kind of reading the water, watching, doing a lot more observation than actual fishing.
Yeah.
And then picking a few targets and going out and really dialing in a presentation and catching those fish, even though, you know, you might only catch, you know, 4 or 5, maybe 1 fish in a day. Who knows? But if that is your jam and that's what good fishing is to you, then do it, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Who's this Mitch Walker guy?
Oh, freaking yeah, it's been a long time. So it's funny, we used to, back in the day, there were all these debates about catching 100 fish in a day.
It's not even possible.
Or 1,000 fish in a year. I can't remember. And so we took a boat over to one of the old fancy pelican, or the old bluegill. Yeah, the bluegill
It's a big
pond.
word, bluegill.
Bluegill, and just absolutely destroyed them. And then Curtis and I went to a trout lake, and we had one of those clicker counters.
So nerdy. But we would catch so many, and people are like, oh, you're not catching that many fish.
Yeah.
I said, well, we want to be better, so we're going to keep track.
Yeah.
So we clicked 251 to the boat.
To the boat.
Between the two of us.
So, yeah, I mean, but does that mean that was fun, just trying to catch as many fish as possible? You know, some days, sure, that's fun. But if that's what every fishing trip was to you, then who knows, it might get old.
A little bit.
Anyway, so if and the other thing is, like, if you think that you've got it all just dialed and you're the best because you have good days in your own relative mind, then maybe just think outside your own box sometimes.
Yeah.
There's always someone out there better than you.
Absolutely.
Except not a lot of people have a purple popsicle vise that's
Thank
up on the
goodness.
wall. Yeah. People were asking also earlier, what's behind the
Oh, yeah,
fly
what's in our
fisher
box?
That's, are you going to unveil it?
surprise?
It'll really shock and awe you.
It's a dartboard. And I'm like 38-1 against Brigham.
What are you against me?
Oh, you hardly ever play.
Yeah,
bro.
that's because you're 0-1.
0-1. Lance got lucky one day.
I hardly ever play too because I played once.
Oh my god.
Lesson is, if you're going to play Lance in something, prepare to
I beat
lose.
both of you guys, and I don't even play. You guys have played for weeks.
Oh yeah. Well, let's play.
Pickleball.
Oh
No.
yeah, I'm into that.
No, let's play 5 games in a row.
5 games. I'll try
Okay,
it. I'll
all
probably
right.
get beat, but I'm
You will get
1-0
beat.
so far.
You're going down,
You got a bad shoulder. You don't have no chance.
dude. I'll beat you with my left hand. All right.
Here we go.
Instagram.
All right, Instagram worthy stuff.
Hippie Swine is right. We all suck at fly fishing. That is so true. We all have days where we get our butts kicked, and that's what keeps us coming back. Because if it was easy all the time, it'd get a little bit drab. There's so many different techniques, so many different species, so many different places to fish. There's so much to learn.
Oh, yeah.
Saltwater, freshwater, and on and on. You're right. We are all rookies.
Yeah, and how often do we overcomplicate it too? You know, we realize this is a very simple creature that we're chasing, and you know, if we're
And they kick our butts on the regular.
I know it. I do declare. It's been a while since the Southern Preacher's been out,
Oh boy.
except for these people from North Carolina. I've probably heard that all the time. All right. The next thing, does better gear make you a better fisherman? What do you think?
I think it can. I don't think that it by itself, it's not going to improve your fishing dramatically, but certainly a better rod has more power, is more accurate.
Yeah.
But that said, the caster has way more to do with, the power and accuracy of the rod than the rod itself does. But it certainly helps, yes.
Yeah, and I think it depends on what it is too. I mean, maybe a high-end reel isn't going to
Not going to change as much.
change
for
a
trout
ton
fishing.
as much as your rod might, or your line, for instance. I think lines are underestimated as far as a piece of gear.
That's a huge one. I mean, multiple times people come in and say, I need a new fly line. You look at their line, and it's like cracked down to the core, and it's just nasty. And, you're like, okay, well, a top-of-the-line fly line's between 100 and 130, and they finally come to terms with that, and then they get it. the next day they come in, they're like, holy crap. Like, I feel like I have a brand new setup just because they upgraded the fly line. So definitely don't overlook that.
Getting higher quality leaders and tippet, stronger per diameter.
Yeah.
If you're using the old Berkeley trilene for your fly fishing tippet, can you catch a fish? You absolutely can. But you can also buy stuff that's the same diameter that's a lot stronger, or thinner diameter that's the same breaking strength.
Yeah.
And therefore, get better presentations, get more lifelike drifts, and catch more fish. Lose less flies. So yeah, gear can definitely make a difference.
Another thing is like wading gear. If you have good studs on the bottom of your boots and comfortable boots, you're probably going to stay out there longer. You're going to be able to wade more comfortably.
If your waders don't leak, and again, it's a comfort in staying out there
right
a little bit longer.
That's a big one. So the answer is yes and no. We get into this debate all the time. No, you don't need $1,000 rod. Right. But you will get to the point where you can definitely feel the difference between one of those high-end rods versus, the $89 starter kit. Not saying that that's not going to work. It's just, $1,000 rod most of the time is going to be a much better piece of gear and much more functional.
And there's always going to be some niche conditions that having a rod that you feel more confidence in, you can cast further if that's going to be the case, or even on still water, because it's maybe not all distance, but picking line up off the water, anything that you may need to do to get to the fish you want, and you're going to start to find maybe it is the higher end rod that can make that extra little bit of a difference. There is a reason why, I'm not going to say 1,000, but whatever the number is, that the higher end rods are in that position.
Sure.
There's a lot of design and material components as well. Certainly they don't account for the majority of the cost. But
that rod only costs them $15
I
to
still
make.
caught a carp on it.
It's bullshit.
No disrespect to carp at all, Lance.
I love carp.
That is a good point. It's not just a material thing. There's a lot of research and development that goes into making a high-end piece of gear like that. The other thing is, every company out there is making pretty decent gear.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good gear out there. So like the company fanboys, here's how it usually plays out. Somebody saves up money and buys rod X. Let's say they buy a Sage, and somebody else saves up their money and buys a Winston, and so, all of a sudden the guy that has the Winston thinks that all Sages suck and vice versa. And it's just kind of funny to watch that all. It's like, they're all good. Like, use what you have, use what you like, but just because you have something doesn't make every other brand terrible.
Yeah, and that's one thing that you'll see. We at least try to fish with a bunch of different brands, and we carry a lot of brands. If you go to our store online or flyfishfood.com, or come into our shop, and you can see our rod wall. We've got, I don't know how many different rods, but we've got a lot of brands.
130 slots and more.
And they're all, and we have more than that. But we fish with a lot of different things, brand-wise, from lines to rods and reels, waders, boots. We kind of have to, we feel like we want to look at the different brands from the standpoint of being able to talk to that, and rather than just say, well, I like this brand because that just so happens to be the brand I have.
Serious question for you, Curtis. Would you fish with a rod in one hand and a Primanti sandwich in the other hand?
I can't say, Aaron, because I've never had a Primanti sandwich.
We get trolled by these sandwiches.
Based on Aaron's photos, they look pretty dang good.
Yeah, so
and I want one of them.
You can't do it?
Nope.
You're more of a PB&J guy?
From Manti?
It's very famous.
We'll show you pictures.
I'm not. I don't know what famous. I don't do Gucci.
I've seen them on shows. And
Gucci sandwiches, I'm out.
It's not Gucci, man. It's like a working man sandwich.
Working man sandwich.
Oh, yeah.
It's got a Gucci name.
You to get that meat on them bones, skinny boy.
Come on. We both know I eat more than you do.
I don't think so.
You know what? Speaking of food, somebody asked why we have Sprite on the table.
Because we don't have any Dr. Pepper.
We don't have any Dr. Pepper here.
We're out.
Yeah, so typically it's a podcast that we have to mention all the stuff we like.
Yeah, we're trying to get Dr. Pepper to sponsor our podcast.
Dr. Pepper Zero.
If anybody has any contacts, sorry, I'm cutting you off.
No, if you can
I'm going to keep doing it.
If you can find that Dr. Pepper Can you bleep out this? I mean, you can't bleep out
I can't bleep that finger.
We can digitize it.
But
Not live though.
Dr. Pepper Zero with that cream soda stuff in it. I've
That was
only had
good
it once.
stuff.
Yeah, I'll take it.
That is good. But also, we have a deal with Coke.
Oh yeah,
Coca-Cola.
we're finally not really sponsored, but they take our money so well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
they bring
that's
us
a little different than
sodas
sponsored.
fortnightly.
So Dr. Pepper, if you want to sponsor us,
Yeah, get it.
I'm sure that there's 0 people from Dr. Pepper watching this, but just in case.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Back on target.
Back on track.
Back on track.
What else? Does better gear make you better? Yeah, so I think we've established that it absolutely does. Does it, again, do you have to have a $1,000 rod to go catch fish? No, you absolutely do not. But does a $1,000 rod, generally speaking, cast better than a $200 rod? Yes, it does. Regardless of your experience level.
Yeah.
Are they lighter? Do they fatigue you less? Yes, they do.
Do they frustrate you less?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Right. Well, there you have it. So, by the way, if you haven't checked on flyfishfood.com under the rod section, we have a lot of $1,000 rods.
Shameless plug.
Oh my gosh.
We also
All right.
have a lot of like $150 to $300 rods.
Yeah.
There's lots of them on there.
Dude,
lots of options.
I took that Sage Sonic out the other day.
They're awesome.
That's a great rod for
Yep.
mid-price. Like it's what, $5.95 or
Sounds
something.
right. Mm-hmm.
I could get down with that rod if that was my only choice, and I would be very happy.
Of course. Yeah, there's lots of good sticks out there. Those IMX Pros from
Oh, man,
Loomis
those
are
G
awesome.
Loomis
The
ones.
Orvis Recons are great in their
Yeah.
price points. There's lots of good middle rods like that
Yeah,
that are
absolutely.
well made.
And even if you're just starting into it, for anybody who's listening who's, when we talk about $1,000 rods, it's like that's mind bending if you don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
You bought a fishing
What
pole
the-
for how much? Goodness gracious! You know how many cans of Vienna wieners I could buy with that? Son
No,
of-
please tell us.
I could get some of that Cholula sauce and put it on there and not even have a dent in my bank account. Son of a.
Exactly. I don't even know what I was going to say once Pastor Bob joined.
As soon as you hear the word wieners. All right.
Never a good
We do
word.
have a lot of kits, like
Oh yeah.
entry level things, because that's the thing. If you're wanting to get into it, don't let price and that sort of thing dissuade you. There's good options with okay gear, and that way you're not spending a ton of money getting
Right.
into the sport, and you can still enjoy it and practice and all the stuff we're talking about today.
Perfect.
Practice.
Practice.
We
Like
just-
Allen Iverson.
Allen Iverson style. Gotta
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah.
Practice.
Actually, that may be the opposite of Allen Iverson style, but
Yeah, but that rant was awesome.
that was a good one.
Google Allen Iverson practice. Watch the video, and it's awesome.
Don't
Curtis,
talk
I'll
to me
show you
about the
later.
Game.
All right. So, next step, we talk about learning. We talk about practice. We talked about gear. But when does the learning end? Like, when do you have a master's degree in fly fishing?
Man, I'm so glad that my learning has never ended.
Yeah, Lance
That
asks
is
me
true.
questions every day. No, that's just the thing. Is you got to have an open mind. You should always be in learning mode. You never know when a kid's going to walk in and know how to, say, tie a fly or cast a rod better than you. And that's just how it is. I mean, some people are just born with natural ability, and there's always somebody out there that's going to, be better than you. Or, a lot of times people will pick up the sport very quickly, and they get really, really good really fast. And, you can't be bitter about that. It's just how it works.
Yep.
See if you can learn something.
Put in the time.
Always things to learn. Always, always.
I also learned something just now that Permanis tea is quiet.
Well, it depends on where you're from.
If I'm from Pittsburgh, I guess that's how I would say it.
Yeah.
Okay.
They also say yins.
I don't even understand that.
Yeah, neither do I. It's like the plural of y'all. No, it's not.
It's
Sorry.
vosotros.
Vosotros. Nosotros hablamos español.
But you can be plural. We don't need a plural for you all.
Oh man, yeah, I know. It's just the
it's
thing.
confusing.
It's craziness.
Imagine having to learn English. It's the most jacked up.
Oh, we're
language
trying to
I've-
figure it out over here in Utah. I promise you that.
No. Jeez. All right. So where
we had?
I've seen over there when we was down on the river.
Are you from Vernal now, or
no? Because then I'd say major.
Fixinda.
Regular or major? Which
Either
is
one.
worse? Yeah, they're both bad.
They're both bad.
Okay, now this is our bread and butter. Where's our timer? How long have we been talking?
We've got 15 minutes left.
15 minutes left?
Time has flown by.
Goes a little fast.
Jeez. Let's see.
How about this, everybody? Does the audio sound okay today?
Except for mine. They say I need to swallow the mic because it's more than 1 inch from my face.
What's the Joe Rogan rule? These were the mics Joe Rogan used for a while. Fist length away.
I have large hands, and I'm going to have to, it's going to be further for me because my hands are bigger.
That's okay. Your voice box must be bigger too.
It is. And I had that certain cold virus that's been going around, so now I have a voice for radio on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Swine flu.
I know the feeling.
I know. I feel like if I listened to this in my truck with a subwoofer, I'd have to turn the bass down because, I'm just manly today. Anyway, so the last bullet point doesn't mean this is the last thing we're going to talk about, but is tying your own flies. So does that make you better? Does that improve your fly fishing game? I think it does. I think it does a lot.
Yep.
And it's not ever about saving money tying flies. Like, I think there maybe are like 4 people on planet Earth that have been able to figure that out, but it's not how it works.
Nope.
But for me, it's, say you're on the river and you see a bug that, has a black stripe down its back and then a tan belly, and you go to the fly bins in the shop and you're not ever going to find exactly what that is. If you tie your own flies, it's really easy to make that change. Whip up a few of your own thing and, go out and catch fish with it.
Yeah. When you start to tie, the other thing too is that you're able to really dial in what your local areas are going to, or wherever you're fishing, you can dial that in a lot more accurately. In some cases it matters, some cases it doesn't. It definitely brings a lot more enjoyment, which I think when you're having fun and doing something like that, it makes you a little bit more passionate, so you may be inclined to learn more about the types of waters the fish are going to hold in, and how that's related to how they eat, what they eat, when they eat, and then so the tying part just loops back around to that, because you're not going to. You can tie a fly without knowing what it is, but it's not as common. People are kind of getting into what kind of fly it is and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's very rewarding to catch fish on flies that you tied, even if they're not your own patterns. Just a fly that you put in the vise, hook you put in the vise, and wrap the materials on, and it's just a lot of fun that way. It's also, I think it's a good point to say, like, there's a whole bunch of flies that you can't buy.
Right.
There are only there's thousands of patterns available, but there's 20,000, a million more, a zillion more that are not commercially available. And you can't get every fly, just like you're saying, you can't fine tune them. You could make a fly that floats higher or that floats more in the film. You could make a nymph that's more or less dense. You could make streamers that swim different ways, that jig more, that sink faster, and on and on. There's lots of reasons to tie your own flies. Again, don't construe this for saying you can't be an effective angler if you don't tie your own flies. That's not it at all. You can obviously catch tons of fish on flies that are commercially available. But if you do tie your own flies, I think it is a huge advantage.
Yeah, absolutely.
DJ Torch says you can also vary the bead size. So if you're into Euro nymphing, that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
If you're using store-bought flies, you're pretty much dialed into
one or two bead sizes.
1 or 2 bead sizes, and if you tie your own, you can put whatever you want on it. So that's a huge part of it. But we hear the people all the time say, well, I don't tie flies because I don't have time. I'd rather spend my time fishing. It's like that's the worst argument in the whole world. It's like you have 15 minutes after dinner before you got to go put the kids to sleep. You can go down and bang out 4 or 5, red darts or whatever your favorite fly is, but you can't take that 15 minutes to go to the river and catch a bunch of fish, So it doesn't mean that you're not ever substituting the time on the water for tying flies.
Yep.
And if that's the case, then maybe
Sure.
that's a choice that you've made, and
Yeah.
that's what you like.
I don't think anybody would. Well, I shouldn't say that. Somebody probably favors tying flies to fishing, but that's not going to be common.
Right.
Almost anybody's going to say, "I'd rather fish than tie flies," of course.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's part of preparation. It's just a lot of fun to think about the possibilities. It also, I think, is a good exercise to, again, make you a more effective angler. It's making you think ahead of time of what you might encounter. Same thing when you're going to the fly bins and picking out flies before you go fishing, but being able to not be limited by what's in the bins and just think, last time I was there, I saw this hatch, like you're saying, Curtis, and I want to make whatever it is, mayfly, caddis, stonefly, midge, whatever, that looks exactly like what I saw in the river last time. And then even anticipating, after years of fishing the same areas, you go, okay, it's now October. I usually start seeing some October caddis. All the other smaller caddis seem to disappear. I start seeing small betas again. I start seeing midges.
Yep.
You make sure you have those patterns covered and you're ready to go, and you're just thinking, your mind's getting wrapped around what the next trip is going to entail.
Yep. One thing I would do from a learning kind of be better when it comes to tying flies as well is I will take photos even with your phone, and then you just store them in your iCloud or Google or whatever, and then you can always go back to those dates and kind of look at the bugs that you were seeing on the water. That could be more inspiration for tying. If it's 30 degrees below zero outside and snowing, you're not probably going to hit the river.
Right.
Nope, I do.
You can
I do.
cheat. Not everyone's hardcore, but
Not everybody has a thick layer of blubber around their skeleton.
I don't think that helps. You still get cold.
Trust me, I
seen it.
did the science. It works. A few questions about vices. That goes back to buying expensive rod. You don't need an expensive vise. I think that's one of the pieces of gear, like you get to the point of diminishing return fairly quickly on a vise.
Yeah.
But if you're going to tie flies for a long, long time and you want something that's going to last, maybe a super high-end vise will work. This is the comment. What vise do you recommend for someone that's starting? I can't afford to buy a Nor vise. Well, guess what?
Anyway.
I'm not going to go on the record, but I will say that I'd rather have like a Renzetti Traveler over that one any day.
It's
But
more versatile.
it is more versatile. It does more things. I think it clamps down better, but you don't need to break the bank on a vise. We recommend the Renzetti Traveler. We sell that vise more than anything out there. But at the end of the day, like if you have a buddy that has a peak vise and you've tried the peak vise works for you.
It works great.
Go for it.
Griffin,
There's
mongoose,
Griffin, the mongoose is a great one.
All of those are going to do a great
yeah,
job.
there's really not a lot of wrong answers there, but the vise must hold a hook without you thinking about it. It shouldn't slip when you tie, all that stuff. So
That would be more frustrating and make you tie less with lower end vices that can't do that.
yeah, it's like having leaky waders, right?
Yep, not getting in the water.
Oh,
All right, we're down to 8 minutes.
8 minutes.
We can do whatever we want, but
did we talk about basic entomology a little bit? I mean,
not.
We didn't really.
entomology it's kind of a subject where you need to know enough to be dangerous. But at the end of the day, like if you went to the river, turned over a few rocks, found a few bugs without even knowing what the heck they were, and then tying flies that look like those, it's probably a good start. Knowing the life cycle of that bug and what it's called is probably going to be even better, because you're going to know when it's most active in the water, how it hatches, what the adults look like versus emergers, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, a basic understanding of entomology, I think, is a good skill to have, and a good skill to really just try to get better at as you go through fishing. And you don't have to go like PhD level, like our buddy Roger, who was a retired professor from Texas A&M. But
and one thing I found, and I really like to kind of geek out on bugs, but when you go down that rabbit hole and you start talking about species differentiation and differences between this and that, I've realized that, number one, the trout are not going to care if it's slight, if it has 3 tails or 2.
Right.
But knowing a mayfly versus a caddis will help you certainly understand the behavior of the bug, which then helps you understand the behavior of the fish. Your tying how to imitate it, what it does. I mean, so there's a lot of things that come into play with entomology that help you become a better fisherman / woman than just being a super pro at knowing, this Greek name of this. And, I know some of those, but as I've gone down that rabbit hole, it's not as helpful. It's fun, sure.
No.
And I like to take photos of bugs, but
here's an example of one that I hear a lot in the shop. When we recommend stonefly nymphs, let's say right now or in the dead of winter, and customers look at you like you're from outer, like you don't know what you're talking about. Well, don't those hatch in the summertime? They do.
Yeah.
So, well, why would a fish eat them now? Well, because they are on a several-year life cycle. A lot of, like, we have goldens around here, usually like a 3 or 4 year life cycle. So there's always various stages and year classes in the river, and they all have behavioral drift. So they're in the river and they're available to the trout year-round. Now, obviously, they're more available when they're hatching, but that doesn't mean you only can fish them then.
Yeah.
So there's an example to me of just, you don't have to know the Latin name of a golden stonefly. You just need to know that they're in the river all the time in various stages, and you can always fish them. Again, deep diving is not necessary. Basic understanding helps a lot.
Do you boys prefer a BWO, a Baetis, or a blue wing olive? Which one do you like?
PMD.
A PMD. Oh, man.
Never ends.
So, yeah, I think that, just a basic understanding of entomology. And the other thing is once you have that down for, like, say, one region of the country, or say one river, you don't have to relearn that every single year. The bugs kind of follow the same path every year.
Yeah, certainly the case. Well, let's see. Winding up, I don't think we have any other huge...
Everybody mash the like button.
Yeah,
we have
like
more
and
people
subscribe.
watching now.
The other thing, too, again, if you just joined us or haven't been listening, us three are hosting a trip to Argentina at the end of February. If you want to go and have some fun, we're going to catch some fish. We are going to eat some beef.
Ooh,
and we do a little tour of the city, and then we go down to Patagonia and fish and have fun. So anyway, we've got a couple spots open. If you want to hit us up on Insta or send an email, Curtis or Cheech at flyfishfood.com.
I think we have 10 spots, and I think we only have a few left.
Yeah. So yeah, we're pretty limited, but we do have some openings as of right now. Today, we're trying to get everything wrapped up in probably the next month, so we can get everything booked. It's a fun time. We've done it before, and it's good.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to share a boat with Lance in South America, and enjoy that time.
I don't want to.
Trust me, every time I get in a boat with him, I end up having to row him into all his fish. But
except for the part where I'm rowing,
it's all good. Anyway, so I think we are
we're about there.
So make sure you mash that like button, subscribe, and on our honor, we will do our best to do more.
We are going to do more podcasts, so we're getting into podcasting season.
Yeah, so
to speak.
Plus, I think with all this craziness that's going on with the Rona and everything, I think everybody's past that. We shouldn't have any major disruptions soon. So
yeah, just get out there, fish, practice.
One last question, Curtis. Why do you eat Pringles sideways?
Whoa, I eat Pringles sideways?
Remember we had those Argentine Pringles?
Yeah, and I ate them sideways.
Well, here's what people don't realize. The Japanese Pringles can is like thinner than a soda can.
Oh, yeah, it was nuts.
Those chips were tiny.
We still have some down there.
We do? They are Argentine flavored chips from Japan that are smaller than normal Pringles.
Yeah, that's a souvenir. We're saving that.
You know what? We need to order some of those in so that we can do a viral TikTok video of eating half a can of Pringles in one bite. I could totally do it.
Oh, man.
I can hear you getting fat.
Anyway,
Name that movie.
so I know that movie. Isn't it Tommy Boy?
Yes.
All right. And
all right, everybody. Thanks for joining.
And
See
thanks,
us next
Patrick.
time.